Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Horizon, watching the stars drift by through the large viewing window. The ship moved through space quietly, carrying diplomats and scientists to various worlds across the galaxy. It was a peaceful job, one that Jake had grown to enjoy over his 15 years of service. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for over 100 years. It had been a long journey from the days when humans first left Earth and discovered they were not alone in the universe. What they found surprised everyone. Most of the galaxy was populated by gentle beings who lived on calm, stable worlds. These aliens had never faced the daily dangers that humans considered normal. They called Earth a death world because everything on it seemed designed to kill its inhabitants. The weather could change from peaceful to deadly in minutes. The ground shook without warning. Animals hunted each other with a violence that shocked other species. Because of this, most aliens feared humans. They respected their strength but kept their distance. Humans were useful as guards, soldiers, and workers in dangerous places, but they were not the kind of beings you invited to dinner parties. Jake had learned to live with this reputation. He was tall and strong, with dark hair and calm blue eyes. His crew of 30 humans ran the ship smoothly, and they tried to be polite to the aliens they met. Still, he often saw the fear in alien eyes when they looked at him. The peaceful morning was broken by a sharp beeping sound from the communication station. Lieutenant Amy Foster, the ship's communication officer, looked up from her console with worry on her face. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission. It's coming from the Zelani coalition. The signal is very weak, like it's traveling from far away." Jake walked over to her station. The Zelani were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most peaceful species. They lived on water worlds and spent their time studying philosophy and growing beautiful underwater cities. They had never hurt anyone and were considered friends by every species in the Federation. "Put it through, Lieutenant." The main screen flickered to life, showing a blue-skinned alien with large, sad eyes. The creature's gills moved rapidly, showing its fear and panic. Jake recognized the being as a Zelani, though he had never seen one look so frightened. "This is Counselor Vashna of the Zelani Coalition," the alien said, its voice shaking. "We are sending this message to all Federation members. We need help. Please, someone must help us." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Zelani never asked for help. They were the ones who usually offered aid to others. The image on the screen changed, showing horrible pictures of destroyed cities. Buildings that had once been beautiful were now broken and burning. Bodies floated in water that had once been clear and blue. "The Korthak Empire has invaded our space," Vashna continued. "They came without warning and without reason. We tried to talk to them, to find a peaceful solution, but they will not listen. They destroy everything they find. Our people are dying." More images appeared on the screen. Children were being taken from their parents. Ancient libraries that contained thousands of years of wisdom were being burned. Jake's hands formed fists as he watched. "We have tried to defend ourselves, but we are not warriors. We know nothing of fighting. The Korthak are strong and cruel. They take pleasure in our suffering. They have told us that mercy is for the weak, and that all weak species deserve to die." The image returned to Counselor Vashna, who now had tears in his large eyes. "We have sent messages to every Federation world asking for military help. Most have replied with kind words, but no action. They say their own forces are too important to risk. We understand their fear, but our people continue to die while we wait." The alien leaned closer to the camera, his voice becoming desperate. "If there is anyone out there who still believes in protecting the innocent, please help us. We are not asking you to conquer anyone. We are not asking you to take anything from the Korthak. We only ask for mercy. We ask that someone with the power to fight will come and stop this killing. Our children are counting on you." The message ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake stared at the empty screen, feeling anger build in his chest. The Korthak Empire was known throughout the galaxy as a group of bullies who took what they wanted from weaker species. They believed that might made right, and they had no respect for life. Lieutenant Foster broke the silence. "Captain, should I send this to Earth Command?" "Yes, immediately," Jake replied, "and mark it as Priority 1. While Foster worked at her console, Jake thought about what he had just seen. The Korthak were making a mistake if they thought no one would stand up to them. They clearly did not understand how humans thought about protecting the innocent. 3 days later, Jake received orders to return to Earth immediately. The Horizon changed course and headed for humanity's home system. During the journey, news reports came in from across the galaxy. The Federation Council was meeting an emergency session to discuss the Zelani situation. When Jake arrived at Earth, he was surprised to find the planet's orbital stations buzzing with activity. Military ships were moving in and out of the system, and the communication channels were busy with coded messages. Jake was ordered to report to Admiral Lisa Grant at Earth Military Command. The Admiral was a small woman with gray hair and sharp green eyes. She had been in charge of Earth's military for 10 years, and she was known for making quick, smart decisions. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said when Jake entered her office, "I assume you've been following the situation with the Zelani." "Yes, Admiral. It's terrible what's happening to them." Admiral Grant nodded and activated a wall screen that showed star charts of the galaxy. The Federation Council met yesterday. Species after species stood up to express their sympathy for the Zelani, but none offered to send military aid. The Korthak have a reputation for being vicious fighters, and no one wants to risk their own people. Jake felt disgusted but not surprised. Most Federation species were peaceful by nature, but that also made them unwilling to fight even when fighting was necessary. "What about us, Admiral? What is Earth's position?" The Admiral smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that Jake had seen on the faces of human soldiers before they went into battle. Ambassador Ryan Clark addressed the Council this morning. When it was Earth's turn to respond, he stood up in front of representatives from 300 worlds. Most of them expected him to give the same polite refusal as everyone else. The Admiral touched a control, and the screen showed a recording from the Federation Council chambers. Jake could see Ambassador Clark, a tall man with gray hair and a calm expression, standing at the human podium. "The Zelani asked for mercy," Clark said in a clear, strong voice that carried across the huge chamber. "Earth has heard their plea. We will respond." The recording showed alien representatives looking at each other in shock. Some seemed afraid, others appeared surprised. A few looked relieved that someone was finally willing to act. Admiral Grant turned off the recording and looked at Jake. "Captain, the Korthak think they understand war because they can beat peaceful species who don't fight back. They're about to learn the difference between being a bully and facing someone who fights back." Jake felt a cold satisfaction in his chest. "When do we leave, Admiral?" "Task Force Retribution assembles in 72 hours. You and the Horizon will be part of it." "But Jake," she paused and looked directly into his eyes. "The Zelani asked for mercy. We're going to give it to them. As for the Korthak," she let the sentence hang in the air. Jake understood perfectly. The galaxy was about to see what happened when you made the mistake of threatening innocence while Deathworlders were watching. Outside the Admiral's office, Earth's war machine was already moving. Ships were being loaded with supplies. Soldiers were saying goodbye to their families, and weapons were being prepared. The Korthak had made their choice when they decided to prey on the defenseless. Now they would learn what mercy looked like when it came from the third planet of a small yellow star. Admiral Lisa Grant stood in the war room deep inside Earth Military Command, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship positions and troop numbers. The room buzzed with activity as officers moved between stations, coordinating the largest military operation Earth had mounted in 50 years. "Colonel Webb, report," the Admiral said to a tall, scarred man standing near the main display. Colonel Marcus Webb had fought in the brutal Titan mining wars, where human miners had battled corporate security forces in the asteroid belt. His face showed the marks of vacuum exposure, and his left arm was cybernetic after losing the original in a mining explosion. He was exactly the kind of officer Earth needed for this mission. "Task Force Retribution is coming together, Admiral," Webb said in his rough voice. "We have 12 ships ready to deploy, including 6 combat vessels and 6 support ships. The 7th Marine Expeditionary Unit is loading onto the transport ships now." The Admiral nodded and turned to a woman with short black hair and intense brown eyes. "Lieutenant Colonel Ross, how are your Marines?" Diana Ross commanded the 7th Marine Expeditionary Unit, a group of soldiers who specialized in fighting in hostile environments. Her Marines had trained on worlds with poisonous air, crushing gravity, and deadly wildlife. They were used to situations where everything wanted to kill them. "My people are ready, Admiral," Ross said. "We've been studying Korthak combat tactics for the past week. They rely heavily on fear and intimidation. They're used to fighting species that give up when things get difficult. They're not used to fighting humans. A younger man in black combat gear stepped forward. Major Ben Hayes led a special operations team known as Reaper Squad. His soldiers were experts at infiltration and sabotage, trained to operate behind enemy lines for weeks at a time. My team has identified key Korthak command structures, Hayes said quietly. Their ships use centralized command systems. If we can take out their command centers, their fleet coordination will collapse. The Admiral looked pleased. What about psychological operations? Dr. Karen Lee, a civilian specialist in alien psychology, consulted her tablet. She was a small woman with gray hair who looked more like a teacher than a weapon of war. But her understanding of alien minds had been crucial in several past conflicts. I've been analyzing Korthak communications, Admiral. They believe fear is the ultimate weapon. They think all species will eventually submit to superior force. What they don't understand is that humans don't react to fear the same way other species do. Colonel Webb smiled grimly. Fear makes most aliens run away. Fear makes humans angry. Dr. Lee nodded. Exactly. The Korthak use psychological warfare to break enemy morale before the real fighting starts. But their tactics are designed for species that evolved on safe worlds. They won't work on Deathworlders. The Admiral activated the main holographic display, showing the Zelani star system where the attack was taking place. Intelligence reports indicate the Korthak have 40 ships in the area, including several battlecruisers. They've established orbital control over 3 Zelani worlds and are systematically destroying population centers. She paused and looked around the room. The Federation Council expects us to negotiate or to make some kind of demonstration that will convince the Korthak to leave. They think we'll follow standard Federation military doctrine. Colonel Webb raised an eyebrow. And will we, Admiral? Admiral Grant's smile was cold. The Korthak understand only strength and brutality, so we'll speak their language, but we'll speak it better than they do. 3 days later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Horizon as Task Force Retribution moved through hyperspace towards Zelani territory. His ship was now part of a military convoy, surrounded by destroyers and battleships that looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels most aliens associated with humans, though the ships in the task force were built using lessons learned from surviving on Earth. They had thick armor designed to withstand asteroid impacts, redundant systems that could function even after massive damage, and weapons that could operate in any environment. Most importantly, they were crewed by beings who considered dangerous situations normal. Jake had spent time talking with the other ship commanders during the journey. Captain Amy Foster now commanded a destroyer called the TDF Wolverine. She had requested the assignment after seeing the Zelani distress call. Like many humans, the idea of standing by while innocents suffered was unbearable to her. Captain Morrison, Lieutenant Foster called from the communication station, were receiving a message from the Zelani government. The main screen activated, showing Counselor Vashna again. The alien looked even more desperate than before, his blue skin pale and his large eyes filled with exhaustion. Human fleet, this is Counselor Vashna. We have been tracking your approach to our system. We are grateful that someone has come to help us. But we must tell you that the Korthak forces are very strong. They have 40 warships and thousands of soldiers. We do not want you to die trying to save us. Jake felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. The Zelani were so gentle that even while facing extinction, they worried about the safety of their rescuers. We have tried to understand why the Korthak are doing this to us, Vashna continued. Their leader, War Chief Graktul, has told us that peaceful species like ours are a disease in the galaxy. He says that only the strong deserve to survive and that mercy is a weakness that must be eliminated. The alien leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. They have taken our children to use as slaves. They burn our libraries and destroy our art. They say they want to erase all memory that we ever existed. Please, if you can save even a few of our people, we will be grateful. The message ended, leaving Jake staring at the screen. Around him, his human crew members had expressions of barely controlled rage. Humans might be feared as Deathworlders, but they had strong protective instincts. The idea of adults hurting children triggered something deep and primitive in the human mind. Sir, Lieutenant Foster said quietly, Colonel Webb is requesting to speak with you. Jake nodded, and the screen switched to show Colonel Webb on the bridge of his command ship. Captain Morrison, I want you to know what we're walking into, Webb said without introduction. The Korthak have positioned their fleet around the Zelani homeworld. They're using the planet as a shield, knowing that most Federation species won't risk civilian casualties. And us, Colonel? Webb's scarred face showed no emotion. We're going to end this quickly and completely. The Korthak think they're fighting a typical Federation species that will try to minimize casualties and negotiate. They're about to learn they're fighting humans. 2 hours later, Task Force Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zelani system. Jake immediately saw what they were facing. Korthak ships filled the space around the beautiful blue-green world where billions of Zelani lived. The alien vessels were dark and angular, designed to look threatening. "All ships, this is Colonel Webb," came the voice over the communication system. "Remember, we're here to save the Zelani and stop the Korthak. Show them what happens when Deathworlders get angry." The Korthak fleet reacted quickly to the human arrival. A massive ship that could only be the flagship moved toward them, followed by smaller vessels. Jake could see weapon ports opening and shields activating. "Incoming communication from the Korthak flagship," Lieutenant Foster reported. "Put it through." The screen filled with the image of a reptilian creature covered in scars and wearing elaborate battle armor. This had to be War Chief Graktul, the leader of the Korthak forces. His yellow eyes glowed with arrogance and cruelty. "Unknown vessels, this is War Chief Graktul of the Korthak Empire. You are interfering in our conquest of inferior beings. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed like all who oppose us." Jake looked at the alien with disgust. Graktul was exactly what he had expected, a bully who enjoyed causing pain to those weaker than himself. Colonel Webb's voice came over the communication channel, calm and steady. "This is Colonel Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. You have been given one chance to withdraw from Zelani space. That chance has now expired." War Chief Graktul laughed, a harsh sound that made Jake's skin crawl. "Humans, we have heard of your species. You think you are warriors because you come from a dangerous world. We will show you what real warriors can do. Surrender now, and we will kill you quickly." Colonel Webb's response was quiet, but it carried across every human ship in the task force. "War Chief Graktul, you have made 2 mistakes. First, you attacked innocents who asked for mercy. Second, you threatened the species that evolved on a world where everything tries to kill us every single day." The communication channel went silent for a moment. Then Colonel Webb's voice returned, no longer calm but filled with cold fury. "You want to see what real warriors can do? You're about to find out. All ships engage the enemy. Show them how Deathworlders fight." The battle for the Zelani system was about to begin, and the Korthak were about to learn why no one in the galaxy had ever successfully attacked a human world. The space around the Zelani homeworld erupted into violence as the human task force engaged the Korthak fleet. War Chief Graktul had expected the humans to fight like other Federation species, carefully, defensively, trying to minimize their own losses while slowly wearing down the enemy. He was completely wrong. Captain Amy Foster commanded the destroyer TDF Wolverine, one of the smaller ships in the human fleet. When the battle began, she did something that shocked every Korthak commander watching. She aimed her ship directly at the largest enemy battlecruiser and accelerated to maximum speed. "Captain, we're heading straight for their guns," her weapons officer, Lieutenant Dave Parker, said nervously. Amy smiled grimly. "That's the idea, Lieutenant. The Korthak expect us to keep our distance and trade shots like civilized beings. They're not prepared for someone crazy enough to get close." The Korthak battlecruiser opened fire, its massive weapons designed to destroy ships at long range. Energy beams struck the Wolverine's shields, causing damage that would have forced most Federation ships to retreat. Instead, Amy ordered her ship to accelerate even more. "All power to forward shields," she commanded. "Prepare for close-range engagement." The Wolverine took hit after hit, her shields flickering and failing, her hull showing scorch marks from near misses. To the Korthak, it looked like the human ship was committing suicide. But Amy had grown up on a world where hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions were normal parts of life. Taking calculated risks in dangerous situations was what humans did. When the Wolverine reached point-blank range, Amy gave the order her crew had been waiting for. "All weapons, fire everything we have." The destroyer unleashed every weapon it carried directly into the side of the Korthak battlecruiser. At such close range, the enemy ship's shields were useless. Missiles, energy beams, and projectile weapons tore through the alien vessel's hull, causing explosions that lit up the darkness of space. The battlecruiser, 3 times larger than the human destroyer, began to spin out of control as its engines failed and its command center went dark. War Chief Graktul watched in disbelief from his flagship. The humans had just sacrificed one of their ships to destroy one of his largest vessels, except the human ship was still fighting, its crew somehow keeping it operational despite damage that should have killed everyone aboard. "How are they still alive?" he growled to his tactical officer. The officer, a smaller Korthak named Sub-Commander Krill, studied his sensors nervously. "Sir, their ship appears to be built differently than other Federation vessels. It has multiple backup systems for everything. Even with heavy damage, they can still function." This was something the Korthak did not understand. Human ships were designed by beings who lived on a world that constantly tried to kill them. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. And the crews were trained to keep fighting even when everything was falling apart around them. While the space battle raged, Major Ben Hayes was leading Reaper Squad on a different kind of mission. His team of 12 Special Operations soldiers had launched from their transport ship in small, stealthy pods designed to look like space debris. Hayes and his squad drifted toward a Korthak command ship, using minimal power to avoid detection. They wore environmental suits that could keep them alive in the vacuum of space for hours, something most alien soldiers could not do. "Remember the plan," Hayes whispered into his radio. "We bored through the waste disposal ports. These ships were designed by beings who think space combat happens at long range. They're not expecting borders." The human soldiers attached their pods to the Korthak ship's hull and began cutting through the metal, using tools originally designed for asteroid mining. Within minutes, they had created an opening large enough to enter. Inside the enemy ship, the Reaper Squad moved through corridors that were dark and filled with strange smells. The Korthak had built their vessels for intimidation, with sharp edges and threatening decorations everywhere. But the humans paid no attention to the psychological warfare. They had a job to do. Hayes led his team toward the ship's command center, using blueprints they had studied during the journey to Zelani space. They encountered their first Korthak guards in a corridor near the main computer core. The alien soldiers were large and strong, armed with energy weapons and wearing heavy armor. They should have been more than a match for humans in a straight fight, but the Reaper Squad did not fight fair. They used tactics learned from hunting predators in Earth's forests and surviving in hostile environments where everything was dangerous. The humans moved through the ship like ghosts, appearing from vents and maintenance shafts, striking quickly and disappearing before the Korthak could react. Within 20 minutes, they had reached the command center and planted explosive devices throughout the ship's computer systems. "Charges set," Hayes reported to Colonel Webb. "We're ready to take out their coordination systems." Meanwhile, Dr. Karen Lee was conducting her own form of warfare from the human command ship. She had been broadcasting messages to the Korthak fleet on all frequencies, but these were not the usual demands for surrender that most Federation species would send. Instead, she was sharing human entertainment and historical records. She showed them footage from Earth's wars where humans fought each other with the intensity that shocked most aliens. She shared videos of humans voluntarily jumping from aircraft, climbing mountains in storms, and diving into the ocean to fight sharks. But the most disturbing thing she broadcast was footage of human children playing. The video showed young humans swimming in water filled with dangerous creatures, running through forests where predators hunted, and playing games that would terrify adult members of most species. "What are these creatures?" Sub-Commander Krill whispered as he watched a video of human children building snow forts during a blizzard that would have killed most adult aliens in minutes. Dr. Lee's voice came over the communication system, speaking calmly as if she were giving a lecture. "These are human children at play. This is what we consider normal recreation for our young. Perhaps now you understand why we are not afraid of your threats." The psychological impact on the Korthak forces was immediate and devastating. These beings had built their entire military doctrine around the idea that fear was the ultimate weapon. Now they were facing an enemy that seemed to have no concept of fear at all. War Chief Graktul was becoming desperate as he watched his fleet take losses they had never experienced before. The humans fought like natural disasters given purpose and direction. They took risks that no sane being would consider, and they somehow survived situations that should have killed them. "All ships, focus fire on the human command vessel," he ordered. "If we can destroy their leader, the rest will retreat like all Federation species do." This was another mistake. Humans did not retreat when their leaders were in danger. They became more dangerous. Colonel Webb's command ship came under heavy fire from 6 Korthak vessels at once. The human ship's shields failed and its hull began to show damage, but instead of withdrawing, Webb ordered his ship to move closer to the enemy formation. "Sir, we're taking heavy damage," his tactical officer reported. "I know," Webb replied calmly. "Signal Major Hayes. Tell him to detonate the charges now." Across the Korthak fleet, the command ships that Reaper Squad had infiltrated suddenly erupted in explosions as their computer systems were destroyed. Ships that had been coordinating their attacks suddenly found themselves isolated and confused. At the same time, Lieutenant Colonel Diana Ross was leading her Marines in an assault on the main Korthak base on the surface of a nearby moon. The enemy had fortified the position heavily, believing it was impossible to attack. They had not considered that humans might approach it like they would approach any other hostile environment. Ross's Marines used demolition techniques learned from mining operations, environmental suits designed for toxic worlds, and tactics developed for fighting in conditions that would kill most beings. The Marines moved through the base like they were exploring a dangerous cave system, using explosives to create new passages and breathing equipment that let them fight in areas filled with toxic gases that the Korthak had released to stop attackers. Within 2 hours, the base was under human control, and hundreds of Zelani prisoners had been freed. War Chief Grak Tool stared at his tactical displays in growing horror. Half of his fleet was damaged or destroyed. His ground forces were being overrun by beings who seemed to thrive in conditions that would stop any normal army. Worst of all, his own soldiers were beginning to panic. The Korthak had built their empire by convincing other species that they were unstoppable forces of nature. Now they were facing beings who actually were forces of nature, and the difference was becoming clear to everyone involved. Colonel Webb's voice came over the communication channel, as calm as if he were discussing the weather. "War Chief Graktul, your fleet is defeated and your forces are surrendering. I am giving you one final chance to withdraw from Zelani space. Refuse and we will show you why no species in the galaxy has ever successfully attacked a human world." For the first time in his military career, War Chief Graktul felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. Word traveled fast through the Korthak Empire. Ship captains who had escaped the battle at the Zelani homeworld carried terrifying stories back to their commanders. They spoke of humans who fought like demons, who showed no fear of death, and who seemed to become stronger when faced with impossible odds. War Chief Graktul sat in his private chambers aboard his damaged flagship. Staring at casualty reports he could barely believe. In less than 6 hours, the humans had destroyed or disabled 23 of his 40 ships. His ground forces had surrendered after encountering human Marines, who fought through conditions that should have killed any living being. But the most disturbing reports came from his own soldiers who had survived encounters with humans. They described beings who moved through hostile environments like they were taking pleasant walks. They told stories of human medics who treated wounded Korthak prisoners with the same care they gave their own people, even after those same prisoners had been trying to kill them minutes before. Sub-Commander Krill entered the chamber nervously, carrying a datapad with the latest intelligence reports. "Sir, we are receiving communications from across the Empire. News of our defeat is spreading to every world we control." Graktul growled in frustration. "What are our military analysts saying about these humans?" Krill consulted his datapad, his hands shaking slightly. "Sir, they believe we have made a serious mistake. These beings are not like other Federation species. They come from what they call a death world, where survival requires constant adaptation to deadly conditions." "I know all of this," Graktul snapped. "What does it mean for our military operations?" "Sir," Krill said quietly, "our entire military doctrine is based on psychological warfare. We defeat enemies by making them afraid to fight us. But these humans appear to have no fear response that we can exploit. Worse, they seem to become more effective when faced with greater dangers." On the surface of the Zelani homeworld, Dr. Karen Lee was working with a team of human medical specialists to help the rescued prisoners. The Zelani refugees huddled together in temporary shelters, still terrified from their ordeal but slowly beginning to believe they were safe. Dr. Patricia Murphy, the chief medical officer of the task force, was treating Zelani civilians who had been exposed to biological weapons. The Korthak had used toxins that slowly destroyed the aquatic aliens' ability to breathe underwater, condemning them to a slow death. "How are you able to cure this?" asked Counselor Vashna, watching as human medics treated his people with medicines that seemed almost miraculous. Dr. Murphy looked up from her work, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had been working for 20 hours straight. "On Earth, we deal with biological threats constantly. Diseases, poisonous plants, venomous animals. Our medicine is designed to handle toxins that most species never encounter." She gestured to a young Zelani, who was already showing signs of recovery. "What the Korthak used as a weapon, we see as just another medical challenge. We've created not just a cure, but a vaccine that will make your people immune to further attacks." Counselor Vashna stared at the human doctor with something approaching awe. "You speak of deadly poisons like they are minor inconveniences." Dr. Murphy smiled tiredly. "Counselor, on Earth we have spiders whose bite can kill a human in minutes, plants that can cause blindness from a single touch, and fish that produce toxins more deadly than most military weapons. We learn to deal with these things because we have to. It makes us very good at helping others who face similar threats. But the most difficult part of the rescue operation was not medical. It was helping the Zelani understand their rescuers. Many of the refugees were terrified of the humans who had saved them. They had watched these beings fight with an intensity that shocked their peaceful nature. Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, a Marine medic, was working with a group of Zelani children who had been separated from their parents during the Korthak attack. The children cowered when she approached, clearly afraid of the tall, strong human in combat armor. Sarah sat down on the ground to make herself less intimidating and removed her helmet, showing her face. She was a young woman with brown hair and kind eyes, but the children still seemed afraid. "My name is Sarah," she said softly. "I know we look scary to you, but we're here to help. We're going to find your parents and make sure you're safe." One of the children, a small Zelani with bright blue skin, spoke in a whisper. "Are you going to hurt us like the bad aliens did?" Sarah felt her heart break a little. These innocent beings had been through so much terror that they could not tell the difference between their rescuers and their attackers. "No, little one," she said gently. "We came here to stop the bad aliens from hurting you. That's what we do. We protect people who need protection." Another child, slightly older, looked at Sarah with confusion. "But you fight so violently. We saw you on the screens. You were not afraid of anything." Sarah thought carefully about how to explain this to beings who had never known violence before their recent ordeal. Sometimes, to protect innocent people, you have to be willing to fight those who want to hurt them. We're not violent because we enjoy it. We're violent because someone has to stand between the bad people and the good people. The older child considered this. "So you fight because you care about us?" "Yes," Sarah said simply. "That's exactly why we fight." Meanwhile, Major Ben Hayes was leading his special operations team on a different kind of mission. Intelligence reports indicated that the Korthak had taken several hundred Zelani to a slave facility on a fortress, whirled deep in their territory. The rescue mission required Hayes and his team to infiltrate one of the most heavily defended locations in the Korthak Empire. The fortress was built on a world with crushing gravity, poisonous atmosphere, and surface temperatures that would kill most beings in minutes. To the Korthak, it was the perfect prison. To humans, it was just another hostile environment to adapt to. Hayes and 12 other members of Reaper Squad approached the fortress world in a ship designed to look like a damaged Korthak vessel. They wore environmental suits that could protect them from the deadly conditions on the planet's surface. "Remember," Hayes told his team as they prepared to land, "the Korthak chose this world because they think it's uninhabitable. They're not expecting a rescue attempt because they believe no one can survive here long enough to mount one." The team landed their ship in a canyon several miles from the fortress and began the approach on foot. The gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth normal. The air was filled with acid vapors, and the ground was covered with razor-sharp rocks that would cut through most materials. For Hayes and his soldiers, it was like taking a difficult hike on Earth. They had trained in similar conditions on worlds throughout human space. Their equipment was designed to handle environments that would destroy most alien technology. The fortress itself was a massive structure built into the side of a mountain. Its designers had relied on the hostile environment to provide most of their security. There were guards, but not many, because the Korthak believed no one could reach the facility alive. They were wrong. Within 4 hours, Hayes and his team had infiltrated the fortress and located the Zelani prisoners. The rescue operation that followed was swift and brutal. The Korthak guards had never faced opponents who moved through their impregnable fortress like it was their natural habitat. Human soldiers appeared from ventilation shafts that should have been filled with deadly gases, climbed through passages that should have crushed any living being, and fought effectively in conditions that should have made combat impossible. Captain Steve Rogers, commanding the assault ship TDF Thunderbolt, provided support for the rescue mission. His ship had been modified with medical facilities specifically designed to treat beings who had been held in harsh conditions. When Hayes and his team emerged from the fortress with nearly 300 rescued Zelani, Rogers was waiting with his medical team ready to provide immediate care. "How many casualties?" Rogers asked as the rescued prisoners were brought aboard his ship. "None on our side," Hayes reported. "The Zelani are in bad shape, but they're alive. The Korthak guards," he paused. "They won't be guarding anyone else." Dr. Patricia Murphy and her medical team worked frantically to stabilize the rescued Zelani. Many had been poisoned with the same biological weapons used on their homeworld. Others showed signs of physical abuse that made the human medical staff furious. But as the rescued Zelani began to recover, something unexpected happened. Instead of being grateful, many seemed even more terrified of their human rescuers than they had been of their Korthak captors. Counselor Vashna, who had been brought along to help calm the rescued prisoners, tried to explain, "My people have never seen beings who can be so gentle and so violent at the same time. They do not understand how the same hands that kill their enemies can heal their wounds with such care." Dr. Murphy looked up from treating a young Zelani who had been severely injured. "Counselor, we are violent when we need to be violent and gentle when we need to be gentle. We learned long ago that sometimes you have to be willing to fight monsters to protect innocence." She gestured to the Zelani patients around the medical bay. "Every human in this room would die before letting harm come to these people." War Chief Graktul stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy, his yellow eyes burning with desperate fury. His empire was crumbling. 3 more Korthak fleets had been destroyed by human forces, and worlds that had been under his control for decades were now declaring independence. "Sub-Commander Krill," he growled, "prepare a message to be sent to the human homeworld." Krill looked nervous. "Sir, are you certain this is wise? The humans have proven to be far more dangerous than we initially believed." Graktul slammed his clawed fist onto the command console. "They are only dangerous because we have been fighting them on their terms, protecting weak species and operating far from their home. It is time to show them what happens when someone threatens what they care about most." The message that Graktul sent to Earth was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every human world would receive it. The war chief appeared on screens across human space, his scarred face twisted with rage. "Humans of the Terran systems," he snarled, "you have interfered with the natural order of the galaxy. You have protected the weak when they should be allowed to die. Now you will learn the price of defying the Korthak Empire. Our grand fleet is moving toward your homeworld. We will burn your cities and enslave your children. We will show the galaxy that even Deathworlders can be broken." The message ended with images of the largest military force the Korthak had ever assembled. Over 200 ships, including massive dreadnoughts that had never been defeated in battle. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Grant watched the message with her senior staff in the war room. When it finished, the room was silent for several moments. "Admiral," said General Frank Miller, the overall commander of Earth's defensive forces, "they're bringing everything they have. Intelligence estimates indicate this is nearly half of the Korthak Empire's total military strength." Admiral Grant nodded calmly. "General, I want you to activate the Home Defense Fleet." Several officers in the room looked shocked. The Home Defense Fleet was Earth's most closely guarded secret. Unlike the diplomatic ships that had been fighting in Zelani space, these vessels represented humanity's true military capability. "Admiral," General Miller said carefully, "are you certain? Once we reveal the Home Defense Fleet, every species in the galaxy will know what we're really capable of." "Good," Admiral Grant replied. "It's time the galaxy understood that threatening Earth is not just stupid, it's suicide." Captain Danny White had commanded the battleship TDF Apocalypse for 5 years, but he had never expected to use it in actual combat. The ship was massive, designed to defend Earth against threats that most humans hoped would never come. The apocalypse was built like everything else humans made, to survive the worst conditions imaginable. Its armor could withstand asteroid impacts, its shields could protect against solar flares, and its weapons were designed to destroy targets that conventional military thinking said were indestructible. More importantly, it was crewed by beings who considered surviving impossible odds to be a normal part of life. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Jane Phillips, his tactical officer, "the Home Defense Fleet is assembling. 50 ships are responding to the activation order." Danny looked out at the growing formation of human warships. Each vessel represented decades of human engineering, built with lessons learned from surviving on the most dangerous planet most species had ever heard of. "Signal the fleet," Danny ordered. "Inform all ships that we're not just defending Earth, we're sending a message to the galaxy about what happens when someone threatens our home." The Korthak Grand Fleet arrived at the edge of the Earth system 3 days later, confident of victory. War Chief Graktul had brought his most experienced commanders and his most powerful ships. He expected to find a lightly defended world whose inhabitants would surrender rather than see their planet destroyed. What he found instead changed his understanding of humanity forever. The Home Defense Fleet met the Korthak forces at the edge of the solar system, near the orbit of Pluto. The human ships were outnumbered 4-1, but they moved with a coordination and purpose that immediately made the Korthak commanders nervous. "What are those ships?" Subcommander Krill asked, studying the tactical displays. "They're nothing like the vessels we fought in Zelani space." War Chief Graktul stared at the human formation. The ships were larger and more heavily armed than anything he had expected. Worse, they seemed to be arranged in defensive patterns that suggested their commanders knew exactly what they were doing. "Signal the human fleet," he ordered. "Demand their surrender." The response came from Captain Danny White aboard the Apocalypse. "War Chief Graktul, this is Captain Danny White of the Terran Home Defense Fleet. You have made the mistake of threatening the homeworld of a species that evolved in hell. Today you learn why no one has ever successfully attacked Earth. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Korthak had brought overwhelming numbers, but the humans had brought something far more dangerous: ships and crews designed to defend their home against any possible threat. Captain White's battleship engaged 3 Korthak dreadnoughts simultaneously, its weapons systematically destroying ships that had been considered indestructible. The human vessel took damage that would have killed any other ship, but its multiple backup systems kept it fighting. Throughout the fleet, human ships demonstrated the same characteristics their crews displayed: the ability to keep functioning under conditions that should have been impossible. When shields failed, they relied on armor. When armor was breached, they used damage control systems learned from surviving on a world where everything was constantly trying to kill them. But the most shocking moment came when War Chief Graktul watched one of his dreadnoughts, the Terror of Worlds, engage a human cruiser in single combat. The human ship was half the size of his vessel and should have been destroyed quickly. Instead, the human captain did something that defied every principle of military strategy. He flew his ship directly into the path of the dreadnought's main weapons, absorbing damage that should have been fatal, and then unleashed a barrage at point-blank range that tore the massive Korthak vessel apart. "How are they still alive?" Graktul screamed at his tactical officer. "Sir," the officer replied, his voice shaking, "their ship construction appears to follow different principles than ours. They build everything with the assumption that it will be damaged and must continue to function. Within 2 hours, half of the Korthak Grand Fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors were in full retreat, their commanders finally understanding that they had attacked beings who considered warfare to be just another form of environmental hazard to survive." Colonel Marcus Webb, who had been monitoring the battle from Zelani space, received permission to lead the final phase of the operation. Task Force Retribution, reinforced with additional ships, moved toward the Korthak capital world. The planet Korthak Prime was the center of an empire that had terrorized peaceful species for generations. Its cities were built like fortresses, and its population had been raised to believe that they were the superior race in the galaxy. Colonel Webb's assault on the planet was swift and overwhelming. Human Marines landed in conditions that the Korthak had believed made their world unconquerable. crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and deadly storms that raged constantly across the surface. To the human soldiers, it was just another day at work. They had trained on worlds with similar conditions, and their equipment was designed to handle environments that would kill most beings. Lieutenant Colonel Diana Ross led her Marines through the capital city, encountering resistance that collapsed as soon as the Korthak soldiers realized they were facing beings who could not be intimidated, discouraged, or stopped by environmental hazards. But when the fighting ended, something unexpected happened. Instead of executing the defeated Korthak leadership or enslaving their population, General Frank Miller made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. "Citizens of the Korthak Empire," he said, standing before the assembled alien leaders in their capital city, "your government chose to prey on the innocent and weak. They chose to threaten beings who could not defend themselves. Most importantly, they chose to threaten our home and our children." The general paused, looking at the defeated aliens with eyes that showed both strength and something else, the possibility of mercy. "However, we are not like you. We do not conquer species because we can. We do not enslave beings because they are weaker than us. We offer you something your leaders never offered to others: a choice." War Chief Groktul, now a prisoner, looked up at the human general with confusion. He had expected death or slavery, the fate his empire had given to countless others. "You can join the Galactic Federation as a reformed member," General Miller continued. "You can learn to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. You can use your strength to build rather than destroy, or you can face isolation from galactic civilization, and the knowledge that if you ever again threaten innocence, we will be watching." The Korthak leadership chose reformation, though it would take years for their society to change. The galaxy watched in amazement as the humans began the process of rehabilitating an empire that had terrorized them for generations.